welcome to this edition of the India Development Debate. I'm Supriya Shrinate, and we're putting the spotlight in this election season on the big bang election announcement of the Congress party. As a part of its political manifesto in the election season, the Congress has very categorically said that the minimum income support guarantee scheme will be launched, which will look at minimum income guarantee at 12,000 per month. It is first going to target about 20% of India's poorest families. Will benefit about 5 crore families, roughly 25 crore people at 72,000 a year. What is the Congress party promising? Is it going to be feasible? Who are the real beneficiaries going to be? What are going to be some of the big challenges of this? Is this competitive populism? And will we see the BJP react to this? Much more and all of that right here on this edition of the India Development Debate. I've got a stellar panel of guests representing all stakeholders and most important views on this subject. I've got Gopal Krishna Agarwal representing the BJP, Sanjay Jha represents the Congress party here, Ritika Khera, Associate Professor from Ahmedabad is joining us here, Mr. M.R. Venkatesh, political analyst, is here as well, and so is Sadanand Dhume, Resident Fellow of the American Enterprise Institute. Thank you very, very much, all of you, for being with us. And I will have to first start with, is this a big deal or not a big deal, really? And Sadanand, if I may start with you, the BJP has announced farmers' incentive scheme in the budget. The Congress trumps it. You know, it also announced tax sobs and reservations, and now Congress has taken it to perhaps another level by announcing a minimum income guarantee scheme. How big a deal do you really believe this is?
Where you come down on this as a policy, it's clearly a big deal, both in policy terms and in political terms, right? You have a minimum income scheme that the Congress says is going to target 250 million people. Nothing on this scale has been tried anywhere in the world. This is coming just a few weeks before a national election. Obviously, the Congress hopes to use this to change the narrative around this election. So whichever way you slice it, it's a big deal. I mean, in the rest of the conversation, we can get into whether it's a big deal that's a good deal or a big deal that's an awful idea. But there should be no debate at all that this is a big deal.
No, absolutely. We will discuss through the course of this show. We want to raise some technical points, and this is what demarcates us from the rest of the shows that will happen on this news flow. But let me quickly take this across to Ritika Khera, and then I go to M.R. Venkatesh. And Professor Khera, 20% poorest families of the country will receive 72,000 rupees every year, which is roughly 5 crore families, 25 crore beneficiaries. Rahul Gandhi says this is the final assault on poverty. My question to you is a little more broad-based. Is this his Garibi Hatao slogan?
So can I first say that to the extent that this announcement is focusing on some real issues for the manifestos of the political parties, and also that it's focusing on the poorest people in the country, I think this announcement is welcome. I think it's a bit, it was a bit odd to hear it put as a final assault on poverty, because if only solving the poverty problem was as easy as giving money in the hands of people, I think we might have done much better in the past few years also. So I don't think that it's quite as simplistic as he makes it out to be in this press conference, and I think there are a lot of details even within what he says at the press conference. There are some contradictions about what exactly they have in mind. Whether it is Garibi Hatao, it doesn't really matter whether it's Garibi Hatao or not, whatever label they want to put on it. But I think as a development economist and who has been working on these issues, I do welcome the fact that it's focusing again on the poorest 20% or whatever it is, because in the past few years we have seen a bit of a setback on welfare programs, both cash transfers and even the in-kind transfers.
Right. No, absolutely. And you know, I want to talk about welfare programs, and should the government look away from welfare schemes at all? Because, you know, something like this is going to be announced and enticed. But before I go any further, I think it's only fair that I talk numbers right here on this show, and who better than M.R. Venkatesh to answer this question. There are estimates being put out there on 3.6 lakh crore, 2% of the GDP and all of that. The reality is somewhere in between. Is this going to cost us 2% of the GDP, and just by simply multiplying 72,000 into 5 crore, is that the right figure we are arriving at? Because I'm presuming it is going to pay the differential. It is not 72,000 to every family every year. It is the differential, I'm presuming, to get to 12,000 a month. And so does the reality lie somewhere between 3.6 lakh to the max to a very low number otherwise. Mr. Venkatesh.
As far as the mathematics of the entire scheme goes, nobody is clear at this point in time. But as you said, it may not be 72,000 rupees to every family. It may be 36,000, in which case it is 1.8 lakh crores, which is 1% of the GDP. Be that as it may, what could probably be done is probably to merge MNREGA into this. Probably they may even merge the 72,000 crore, the farmers scheme into this. And the gap could be around 40-50,000 crores. Perhaps that can be tackled by a variety of other juggleries, and probably a cess or a GST cess or a cess on other things that can probably be used to tackle the balance. So that's what the budget for 2019 to take care. And I'm sure whosoever is in power, if at all the Congress party, they have to break their heads. If the BJP is in power, probably they don't have to. But the larger issue is this what the government has to work out as a dole to fight poverty? Is it going to be the assault on poverty? Is it the right way to do the assault on poverty? My guess is no. Unfortunately, this is not the way you actually do an assault on poverty. Assault on poverty is done through creating jobs, creating infrastructure, creating skills, putting more water into the farms, creating more reach for the output from the farms. All these things are create markets for your products. All these things are the way on which you make an assault on poverty. If this is going to be an assault on poverty, my grandmother was a great calculus mathematician, be that as it may.
Okay. You don't believe this is a great assault on poverty? There are many more things that need to be done before that. There are lots of people out there who share your view. But let me take this across to Sanjay Jha, who represents the Congress party here. And Sanjay, the scheme, I'm a bit of a contrarian than most of the journalists. I think it's a good idea. I think it's well-intentioned to talk about the poor in this country that don't get talked about as much. But my question to you is that you haven't divulged any details, and which is why when I scratch my head, how are you going to fund something like this? What is the back of the envelope calculation that the Congress party has done? Because I know the figures that are floating on social media and, being quoted by BJP ministers is wrong. It is not going to be 72,000 into 5 crore and a simple figure of 3.6 lakh. I'm presuming it's going to be a lower figure. But is there a number that the Congress party has calculated, and how are you going to raise the money required for this without raising taxes?
Supriya, let me start by first kind of addressing an issue that we cannot pretend doesn't exist, which is inequality. Even Davos, where the super jet, super affluent, the real investment bankers and the world statesmen meet, they all agreed that responsible capitalism is the need of the hour. I mean, don't forget that even America is battling a serious issue of inequality. I mean, this is a global challenge. India is worse off because we don't have social security nets. Our growth rates, frankly, have only flattered to deceive. And end of day, I think if you look at the data, inequality in India has gone from bad to worse. 1% of Indians have over 60% of the wealth and 21% of its income. I mean, look at the 5 years of Narendra Modi as Prime Minister. Farmer distress at perhaps one of the highest, 14 years, their income hasn't been as wretched as now. And joblessness at a 45-year high. What is it telling you? I mean, these are symptomatic of an economy that has basically been derailed, which has accentuated the rural crisis to epic proportions. Now, what has Mr. Gandhi announced today? I think what he's announced today is, listen, I mean, And go back to the UNDP data, I'll mention that to you in a while. What Mr. Gandhi has said today is that India's growth story that all of us, champion in, prime time business channels and in all the, glitterati of the world write on it, India's growth story is incomplete. In fact, it will fail on its face if we are not able to transport the millions who are living below the poverty line. The people living below the poverty line is equal to the population of America. So it's a gigantic challenge. Let's not ignore it. So what are we basically recommending? We are saying that, if you look at the data of the UPA between 2004 to 14, the United Nations has acknowledged that 270 million people were lifted out of poverty. But the task is incomplete.
Sanjay,
it's a massive success story
I understand, Sanjay.
after China, but the task is incomplete. We are committed. Yeah, go ahead.
No, Sanjay, I have a direct question for you. My question to you was, is there a back of the envelope calculation on how much is it going to cost internally for the Congress party? I'm sure that has been discussed. And how are you going to fund this? That's my simple question. First, you answer that.
Okay. Let me answer. No, but I think it was important for me to set the context. You can't really get into a transactional mode very early in I believe is a very complex economic social debate. The truth is very straightforward. Mr. Chidambaram, I think, has also gone public and mentioned that. We have been working on it, by the way, for more than 6 months. You have to do your number crunching. I mean, you can't really make an announcement. Mr. Gandhi's announcement, by the way, is not some rhetoric of that 15 lakh variety. I mean, we are talking serious stuff here. We are talking about a commitment in a manifesto. The Congress UPA after May 23rd will deliver on their promise. Now, obviously, you can't do it without looking at what is the state of your finance. Now, very straightforward, and I'll keep this answer short because we can talk about it later on your program. This is, and I'm saying this with full responsibility, the misconception that a lot of people have is going to eat into a lot of existing subsidies. The answer is no. We believe there is a lot of scope and opportunity within our current frame of the budget to actually give a leeway to an efficient government to rationalize certain wasted expenditure, some non-planned expenditures, and look at what I would call as a very smart, effective ways to raise an income for wherever there's a shortfall. I'll give you one hint. Look at NPAs in India. India's NPAs are 12 lakh crores. There are various methods and means by which you can actually sustain this kind of a program over years by actually, one, obviously growing the economy. So the fundamental rules, the economy must grow at a high rate. But the second point is cut down on leakages, rationalize wasteful expenditure, improve those, maybe, and I'm not saying it out of turn.
Okay.
This is not something that has been announced, so you'll have to wait for a formal announcement. But I think in India you have many people who are undertaxed. Many people are undertaxed or maybe underassessed. So we are looking at various avenues here to make it very viable.
I don't know if your big hint is Okay, Sanjay Jha, I don't know if your big hint is that the rich will be taxed higher. I don't know if that's your big hint. I don't know what to make of this. But to the BJP, I have a question. And Gopal Krishna Agarwal, after the budget, it looked like you had it in the bag. It looked like you had enticed the Indian farmer with the Kisan Samman, 2,000 rupees every quarter. Eyebrows were raised of this just happening before the budget, before the elections. But yes, you had gone ahead and done so. But will today's move, will the minimum income guarantee and the kind of numbers that are now being talked about put the BJP on the defensive? Is this the beginning of what many people call competitive populism? Can you resist the temptation to not better this in your own election manifesto? Because what M.R. Venkatesh said was right to an extent. Where I disagree with him is that yes, the Congress will come and scratch their banes if they do get elected to power of how they will do it. But I don't see how the BJP will now not have to deliver, because there are people out there who expect something like this to happen to them. So my simple question is, does this put you on the defensive, and will you oblige? Will we see you better this offer?
I would like to mention is that we have to look into the economics of the issue. Though if the Congress does it, they have to give a roadmap how they will do it, which is not very clear, and what will the conditions. They will top up only up to 12,000 income. Those who are already having the income more than 12,000, will they will definitely not get. But even if somebody has a family income of 10,000 only, he will get 2,000. Then how they are calculating the 72,000 crore? This is one issue. But I would like to mention here is, you cannot compare this press conference statement by Rahul Gandhi ji with the budget announcement that our party has done, Narendra Modi government, our government has done. They have properly budgeted it. They have accounted for all the expenditure. It is in the budget, interim budget, giving whether the fiscal deficit will be under control, what expenditure do we do it on other like good important sectors like education, health, Manrega, subsidies, etc. Those all are in black and white. And if you compare with MP Kisan scheme, with this, it's a completely miscalculation that will come into. The third important point is that merely announcing this and not telling the whole scope, and not even telling what will happen to other schemes, social security schemes, social welfare schemes, etc. Now, just now Mr. Sanjay Jha has given away that they will increase the tax rates. They can look into increasing the tax rate, and they are saying only the rich people are giving tax. Who is saying this? Every middle class, every salaried class, every person who is in the defense forces, everybody is paying tax. It is only the corporate tax which is coming at the larger sections, and if the corporate tax is also quite high across the globe. So, they will destroy the economy, they will destroy the social fabric, they will not take care of middle class, they will leave the salaried class, and just to win an election they may announce. But it is at all not
to the politicians,
very clear what they will do.
To the politicians,
I have 2-3 important. You give me some time. Supriya, you gave enough time. I listened to everybody. Give me some time.
Gopal, I'll come back to you.
Issue is
Gopal, listen to me. Gopal, please bear with me. You have attacked the Congress party. Gopal, the whole idea of this show is to debate what has been announced by the Congress party. So trust me, the 4 of us will be on one side attacking Sanjay Jha. In fact, the 5 of us will be on one side attacking Sanjay Jha. Just bear with me. To the politicians, please keep your answers brief, both Sanjay and Gopal, because I will come back to you. There are important points that this debate has raised. And you know, Sadanand, one of the things that has been said is that, you know, when we grow, things will be taken care of, and growth was supposed to be this one tide that would have lifted all boats. But is there a tacit admission that perhaps growth is not going to ensure uplifting poor from their misery? Perhaps, you know, by increasing productivity, we will not be able to end poverty, and which is why the Congress party is today talking about cash in the hands of people who are poor. Is there a tacit admission that in a welfare state, growth is not going to be enough?
I think that's a very good question, Supriya, and I will answer that. I mean, I think we're kind of a little bit all over the map over here, right? We're like kind of, you know, jumping from the fiscal impact to whether it's going to win votes. And there, I mean, the way I look at it, there's sort of, you know, a couple of different things. Two sort of simple ways of looking at this. First of all, is this a sensible policy for India to follow? And then there's a second question, which is related, but it's just quite distinct, which is, will this be popular in the upcoming election? These are two separate issues. On the big question, which I think Mr. Venkatesh touched upon, but we haven't really addressed, is this good policy? I have to say that I do not think so. We have to be very cautious about these kinds of grand technocratic experiments that are, you know, cooked up by economists in ivory towers. India's had a very bad experience in the past, particularly in the 50s and the 60s, by sort of embracing these kinds of half-cooked ideas and not being able to then extricate themselves from it. So I don't think this is something that we should just casually walk into and start debating the minutiae without even looking at the big picture. The big picture comes first. Is this a good idea? Has this been used historically to successfully eliminate poverty? Do even countries with much higher levels of per capita income, such as the United States, do they want to do this? Or are there serious debates in play, including serious questions raised and serious doubts raised about the viability, the impact on the social fabric, things that go way beyond small things like the fiscal deficit. So that's my first point. I think it's a bad idea. Now, to your question about what it says about growth and jobs, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, in the end, if you step away from this BJP Congress nonsense, this is an admission of defeat by India. What are parties saying? What they're basically saying is that, look, we have no ability to generate 1 million jobs a month. We have no ability to emulate what China has done and to emulate what the East Asian economies have done by moving millions of people from farms to factories. We're stuck in this situation where we have a so-called demographic dividend, which is in danger of turning into a demographic disaster. And the best we can do is give these people dole. So in that sense, I think it's extremely dispiriting and disquieting. And I agree that it's virtually an admission of defeat by the country.
That's an important point that you bring to the table. And M.R. Venkatesh, if I may take that point forward, like Sadanand, I believe there is an admission by our political class, and the Congress perhaps is wary of what the BJP promised in 2014, which was creation of these mammoth jobs that haven't happened. Is there admission by the political class, and has the Congress taken a cue from the BJP that kind of job creation, which is going to employ the vast number of our youth, is not going to be possible? And so this sort of a minimum income guarantee is required. Is there an admission of the fact that we can't possibly employ every youth in this country? We can't possibly create the jobs that are required. And so this sort of a intervention is needed.
You would be appalled to know that the economic survey of perhaps 2016 or 2017 toyed with this idea of universal universal income scheme, and the author of which was Arvind Subramaniam, the then chief economic advisor of the government of India under the NDA government. So this is not something that the Congress can say that with some authority that this is their idea. In fact, the BJP toyed with this idea for some time. So to that extent, I think both the parties have been toying with this Nehruvian idea of putting money into people's pocket and trying to see whether that can revive the economy or balance the economy or put it into a growth mode. But the real question is this the way to do it? That's what is bugging me. If that be the case, why not drop 2,000 rupee note through a helicopter? Why not do something as silly as that? I don't understand why do politicians come with this type of outlandish schemes, and what are they trying to do? They are going to transfer money from the most productive sector, namely the household or the business or the corporates, into the hands of the government, which is going to squander it away. And if Rahul Gandhi had come out with a grand plan of, say, integrating the rivers. Let us assume he says, I'm going to integrate the rivers in next 10 years and do whatever I'm going to do. Then it would have been a grand idea. If what Mr. Sanjay Jha says, I'm going to recover NPA, that's a good idea. But NPA belongs to the bank. You cannot take it from the bank to your exchequer. You can't appropriate it to the consolidated fund. It has to remain with the banks. If the NPAs are there, it has to be recovered for the banks. And the third one, how are you going to fund it? No answer to this. And back of the envelope calculation is either you have to merge all the schemes together, all your welfare schemes, like I said, NREGA and others, or do an increase in taxation. Increase in taxation is going to be disaster for this country, and the implementation of the scheme, I think at this point in time, it is nebulous at best. And three, that whatever that the Congress party or the BJP is talking about is voodoo economics at its very best.
Okay, just give me a minute, because I want to go to Ritika Khera and then I will come back to the two politicians. I'm coming to you, Gopal Agarwal. Just give me a minute, I'm coming back to you. Professor Khera, the identification in a scheme like this is an important challenge, and so is perhaps reassessment of how income is calculated. So far, there is just perhaps 1 or 2 surveys that are done to find out what is the highest earning member's salary, money that they make, if it's 5,000 per month. And obviously there is a bias towards underreporting that. But now if the government is going to, or whoever comes to power is going to put money into the pockets of people, they will perhaps need a more exact calculation. So A, Do you believe that there is a need for reassessment of income? And B, how difficult will it be to plug those leakages and duplication?
Right. So actually you've picked on a very important theme, which is the implementability of this proposal, because it will need the government to know what is the income of these people and for them to report it honestly. Because if they want to bridge the gap, actually the proposal is not clear whether it is to give 6,000 rupees to the bottom 20% or whether it is to bridge the gap. Either way, the income data challenge is very big, and I think it makes this particular proposal in its current form somewhat unimplementable. There is one variant which we think, and 60 economists have endorsed this proposal, which we think is a good idea, which is to make a commitment of this 1%, we think it's going to be roughly 1% of GDP, to beef up the social security non-contributory pension program, which goes to the elderly, everyone below, above the age of 60, to single women and widows, and to persons with disabilities. This is an existing program, but the central government's contribution, for instance, for old age pensions has been stuck at 200 rupees per month per person since 2006. So this is a program that does reasonably well. There is a World Bank study also where they say that leakages are small, and if this program is scaled up and made universal for that age group and for that category, then I think this will become something that's worth talking about in favorable terms. But can I quickly also spend a couple of minutes, addressing some of the issues that came up a little while ago. One, I am a very big votary of redistributive measures, but I am not otherwise a very big votary of certainly not universal basic income. And generally of cash transfers, I mean, I have some reservations. One, of course, is, if it's a proposal like this, how do you identify people? And the other one is, like I said, inflation indexing doesn't really tend to happen, and the value of the transfer erodes over a period of time. But in India, the social spending, the level of social spending in India is very low. It is amongst the lowest in the world. So I think there is a need for some kind of redistributive program. And also, on the other hand, there was some concern about taxation, and I understand this is a business channel, so these concerns will arise. But I think both the tax base in India is small by international standards, and we need to do much more on increasing the base, and also the rates of taxation are on the lower side. This is from Piketty's, Thomas Piketty's work. So I think we shouldn't be necessarily alarmist. The other concern with cash transfers, and particularly when it commits 1% of GDP or more, is that it will strike on existing programs of social support, whether it's the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act or the Food Security Act. And actually those programs, I mean, obviously they're not perfectly implemented, they have all kinds of design and implementation issues, but yet they have, there is research to show that they do eliminate the poverty gap. So for instance, the public distribution system eliminated 20% of the poverty gap according to data from 2009-10, which is the latest year for which these calculations have been done. So I think a new scheme should not strike at old schemes. If it has to be a cash transfer, let it go to these really vulnerable groups such as the elderly who cannot work. These are groups of people who cannot work. There are maternity entitlements which could also be beefed up in the unorganized sector.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And I think you've put out figures there, 8640 crore for additional allocation for the old age, and 1680 crore if that number is revised to 500 per month for, widow and single women. But just give me a minute, because there is something that you said that strikes a chord, which is increasing the tax base. And Gopal Agarwal, I have a bit of a contrarian question for you, and I'm going to club two questions and ask you this. The reality also is that this government has claimed, your government has claimed to have increased tax collection, to have widened the tax base. Does that not create more elbow room for a scheme like this? That's question number one. And if I may quickly club it with question number two, which is a virtuous cycle that one sees being put into motion. 72,000 for about 5 crore families will mean higher consumption. Higher consumption is going to lead to, benefits for the corporate sector, which may, which is going to put the good consumption cycle back in virtuous motion. Will this consumption add to India's tax kitty? The answer should be a simple yes. So won't corporates at the end of the day also stand to gain from this? I mean, from this scheme, we could perhaps see manufacturing and investments and consumption kind of also take off. I know it's a simplistic argument, but it's a logical argument to be made.
Yeah, so Priya, I'll take only to some time. The issue, there are 3 issues that I would like to flag off is that Congress had 60 to 7 out of 60 years out of the 70 years to remove poverty. They did not do it. They have to take responsibility for them. After this same Garibi Hatao was their slogan since several years back, and they are every 5 years selling poverty to buy votes. This is one thing. Second is this is not the way how you deal poverty with. If this is the right way and this is the best way, then I would have agreed. But this is not the correct way of dealing with poverty, removing poverty. The third important issue I would like to mention is, that's very important for your channel, is that we had recently had a budget where the revenue receipt is around 20 lakh crores and capital receipt is around 8 lakh crore. Total is 28 lakh crore and expenditure is already 28 lakh crores. We have a deficit of 7 lakh crores. So that 7 lakh crore deficit is already there, and now Congress is telling that we will increase an expenditure of approximately up to the maximum of 3.6 lakh crore. So the deficit will increase from 7 lakh to 10.6 lakh crores. So it is already it will cross more than 5 to 6% of fiscal deficit. So if they are not going to stick to this fiscal deficit numbers, then they will have to shift some other expenditure, reduce on some other expenditures. They will reorient some of the schemes, or they will cut on subsidies, etc. Or they will cut on infrastructure investment, they will cut on education. Simply they do not, I don't think they are banking that they will increase the revenue collection by more than 3.5 lakh crore annually with increasing tax base without tax collection. So this is the arithmetic of the whole system doesn't at all match the fact and figures of which data I am giving, or which is a black and white data. Which is just 1 month back, which has come out in the public domain.
Okay, Gopal Agarwal, I get your data.
The fiscal deficit of 7 lakh crore is increasing to 10.6 lakh crore without any other clear roadmap. That is how they are doing
Gopal Agarwal, you will have to give me an opportunity to talk. Gopal Agarwal, you will have to give me an opportunity to talk, and my only simple point is, Gopal Agarwal, please listen to me. Just listen to me for a minute. My only simple point is that we can't pick and choose data, because when you're in government, the fisc is an absolutely fine fettle, and when these guys, if they all come back, the fisc is going to balloon. We can't do convenient reading of the data here, but your point well taken, that we need to get more details to be convinced about this as far as the fiscal prudence front is concerned. But Sanjay Ji, I have a bit of a more social sort of a question here. One of the criticisms that I was reading when I was doing research for this show is that, is the Congress removing the incentive to earn? Manrega, and to be fair to the Congress party, you got in Manrega, it was widely ridiculed to the point of, being mocked at even in Parliament by Mr. Modi, but he's gone ahead and not just kept the scheme alive, he's also gone ahead and made the highest ever contribution. But truth be told, Manrega in a lot of ways did dignify labor, did dignify money earned through that. Are you simply just doling out money to the poor, free cash, and are you, in some sense, people say, disincentivizing, the will to earn?
Supriya, I really respect your question, but I need to be very brutally honest here. This is the biggest mistake a lot of us make who happen to be, I think, the more fortunate citizens of this great country. Does anybody know where India ranks on the HDI index, the Human Development Index? We are 131 out of 180 countries. India still has deaths on starvation. Our children are malnourished and stunted. We are amongst the worst defaulters in the way we actually manage our social expenditures. Under Modi, education and health has been given a real bad backseat. I mean, I want to answer the question that some of your people have raised very, very quickly. Firstly, there's only one voodoo economics, and that was a disastrous, stupid demonetization. No further comments necessary. Let me answer what I think Sadanand mentioned. You know, I agree with him that the best way to take an economy forward is growth. But, you know, we got to recognize one reality in India. There is growth, but there is also a very, very severe case that Mr. Gandhi mentioned of crony capitalism. India is like the Gilded Age that America went through. And let's bite the bullet on that. We are seeing some of the largest business houses who are willful defaulters of the public sector banking system. Their name is with the Prime Minister's office. There is no disclosure. We talk of Vijay Mallya, he is the flamboyant poster boy of defaults. But there are many bigger fish than him who are being protected by the government. Then you have Nirav Modi, Mehul Choksi, etc. So to say that growth will address the problem of income distribution is living in a fool's paradise. It's easier said when you are perhaps living in Washington. It's a lot more difficult to execute in our country. Therefore, the bottom line, and I want to make this point very categorical, that I am not making a statement because we are coming out with a detailed mathematical precision of the way we forecast the funding of this entire minimum income guarantee. But please let us not even try and pretend here. The bottom of the pyramid in India needs help. And if anyone believes it's going to happen just by private sector growth, I think we are completely deluding ourselves. Yes, there is a difference between what Sadanand mentioned of the 50s and now. Now we have technology to stop the leakages. We have direct benefits transfer. We have an Aadhaar system that the UP has started. And we can actually now create a proper distribution ecosystem that actually is working well. And by the way, let me tell you, Supriya, let's understand this point. This is creating a level playing field. This is not telling them that you get this 12,000 and you sleep at home. People are aspirational. They want a better standard of life. So this is a beginning. It's not the end.
Okay, yes. I agree with you. Oh, no, Sanjay, I may disagree with a lot of what you may say, but I agree with you on one front that it's very easy to talk about the poor while sitting in our air-conditioned studios here in Delhi at least. But I know Ritika Khera's hand did go up, and I'll come to each one of you. But Ritika Khera, if I may quickly ask you a question. I mean, I know you wanted to make a point, so please go ahead and do that. But one of the questions also is that India is an extremely diversified country. Poverty, social safety net. Welfare is probably a bigger requirement in the north and the east than it is perhaps in the south, where healthcare and education have improved the socio-economic development. What are the social risks of adopting something as homogeneous as this? We're just going to simply look at a yardstick and this is going to be a more homogeneous, one brush paints it all kind of a thing we're looking at. Is there a risk you would highlight?
So I think if they go with this proposal, then quite likely there will be fewer beneficiaries in the better off states like Tamil Nadu and Kerala, and the bulk of the money will go to poorer states. But the point that I wanted to make a little bit earlier, if you don't mind, I mean, and I'm sorry to pick on Mr. Sanjay Jha, but you know, it really shows how much the Congress is out of touch with ground realities. Mr. Gandhi, I watched his 10-minute press conference, and he mentions the word justice very often, and he also says that we can't have two Indias. If the Congress is really concerned and committed to that, then the first thing they should put in their manifesto is to get Aadhaar out of welfare programs like the public distribution system and NREGA wages. The havoc that it has caused in the banking system, and because every month when people have to get their rations, they have to biometrically authenticate themselves, 42 people have died. So, you know, if there is a real commitment to justice and to not having two Indias, really the first item in the Congress manifesto should be to admit that they made a big mistake with Aadhaar. Not only is it endangering the right to life, it is also endangering the right to privacy. Thanks.
Fair point. Yes, but that's another debate. We must do another day on election manifestos. M.R. Venkatesh, a quick question to you. You know, when parties and when political parties are going to be competing with each other to outdo each other, you know, schemes like minimum income guarantee are going to be announced. Is there also a reasonable reason to relook at how the division of funds is happening between the center and the state? The 15th Finance Commission is likely to produce report. Is this going to trigger a considerable amount of debate on that front as well?
Definitely, if the states are going to be short charged for whatever it is going to be, then definitely states have a right to protest. And if you have seen my lectures several times over into the schools and colleges, the Constitution has given enormous amount of responsibilities to the state. And once upon a time, when we were youngsters, the sole representative of the central government was the postman. Nowadays, nobody uses the postman, so there is not much of a link between the central government and the common man. But when it comes to law and order, sanitation, health, electricity, a number of issues are dealt only by the state. To that extent, the devolution of money and of course, the powers have happened to the state, but the money and the collection of taxes has not happened to the state commensurately. So I think this 15th pay commission or the 16th 15th commission or whatever, finance commission or whatever it is, whichever draft it's going to bring about is the first draft of the 15th finance commission will be the 15th draft of the first finance commission, because none of them have gone beyond looking at the templates. We have to start re-looking at things. How is it we are going to have an assault on poverty? How is it that we are going to have an assault on interstate relationship, center-state relationship in terms of fiscal devolution? All these things, unless we are going to look at it from a clean slate, this is not going to happen. If you are going to go back to Nehruvian economics, Nehruvian ideas, Nehruvian thoughts, they are time honored, they are respected. I am not going to crib about it. But to think that Nehru had a solution for everything for all ages to come, I am sorry, I am not going to believe it. We have to look at it afresh. We have to definitely go back to the drawing board, start looking at these things fundamentally. Is the money that is being devolved from the center to the state commensurate with the responsibilities of the state? The answer, anybody will tell you, any student of constitution will tell you that the states have a disproportionately large amount of responsibility and the fund flow is restricted. So to that extent, and two, very important, that we are overpaying our government employees. If you take a state like Tamil Nadu, 130,000 crores is the GST collected, 87,000 crores is the salaries and pension, 30,000 crores is the interest. So there is nothing in the kitty. So we are collecting money from the people and transferring it as wages and to the government employees. So this requires a complete relook. And unfortunately, we are not ready to do that.
Right. Mr. Venkatesh, give me a minute. I want to go across to Sadanand Dhume. And Sadanand, I know you wanted to come in on a point earlier, but going forward, will this scheme, if at all it's implemented, lead to bigger commitment in coming years? I mean, who can wane this off? That's question number one. And question number two also, if you may quickly answer this for me, does the state's responsibility to do fiscal, to do welfare with the fisc available with it gets considerably reduced once you begin cash transfer like this?
Its responsibility gets reduced if you're talking about state governments, because they're still sort of fundamentally responsible for things like health and education, right? Now, there's very good reason for us to think of these things not in terms of an ideal outcome, and I think that's really those are the kinds of dreams that politicians tend to peddle. And I'm glad that my friend Sanjay Jha is sort of resorting to personal attacks on me, because it shows that he doesn't have good arguments. Now, a couple of things. The first is that when you look at this in terms of in terms of states, the things that concerns me most is that effectively what this means is that in perpetuity, people from the richer states, effectively people from places like Maharashtra and Kerala and Tamil Nadu and Punjab, will be writing checks in perpetuity for the unemployable youth in places like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and other such states. So I think that this is something that in a federal system you have to take into account. It's an awkward thing, it's a tricky thing to speak about, but when you try to introduce something so sweeping, you have to take into account the larger political ramifications in a federal polity. So that's my first point. The second point, and I think we haven't, you touched upon this earlier, but I think we haven't spent enough time on this, is that everything in the end, about human beings is not just a simple question of dollars and cents or rupees. In the end, work plays a very, very important role in society. And when you tell potentially tens of millions of young men, what you're essentially telling them is that, look, you are useless to society. You will not be an earning member of society. We're just going to write you a check to keep you happy. What you're doing is potentially extremely disruptive socially. The third point is, what happens to the person who has worked really, really hard, right? Pulled himself up by the bootstraps and got to that 72,000 or whatever mark on their own. You're telling that person that, look, you've worked so hard,
Yes.
you've worked so hard for nothing. And so I think, the fundamentals of this, and you have to take this to Congress.
Okay.
They can't put this out
Okay.
so casually when it could be potentially so disruptive.
Okay, one question last to both the politicians, and my only request, Sanjay Jha and Gopal Agarwal, I hand out an apology first, but please keep it brief because I can't borrow any more time from the next show. But one question, Sanjay, of course, you can respond to this, that this can be a socially disruptive move, in the long term. And the second question that I would want to ask you is the efficacy of this move, the kind of fund cash infusion that's going to happen. How is this going to sort of, have an impact on the ground? How are you going to judge how effective it has been?
Supriya, very, very quick answers. Number one, we have just announced the scheme that we're going to come out with. The details will follow. Mr. Chidambaram, we're going to hold a full-fledged press conference and give you as many details, take all your questions. Number two, my good friend Mr. Dhume has again jumped the gun. What makes him think that there is nothing being worked on for employment? This is not a Narendra Modi government promising 2 crore jobs per year, like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. We are putting some serious application here. We are going to come out with a job, our report on how we're going to create jobs. And by the way, the numbers won't be ridiculous, some fantastic, some, kind of bizarre, outrageous claims that this, absolutely disingenuous government did. So relax, calm down. We are looking at the economy as a larger, I would say, opportunity for us to rebuild India by not just looking at the economy, but by blending those who get left behind into the entire growth story. I want to be vocal on your channel, Supriya. We are going to be elitist snobs, who are going to talk about markets and, FMCG companies and, XYZ. But we want to treat 300 million people out of our country as what? As a liability, as a baggage or what? So let me tell you, with due respects to the right liberal economists like my good friend Mr. Dhume, even America, by the way, is talking of Bernie Sanders and socialism. Even the Democrats have moved to the left. So let's not try and get this old classical theory into play that all India needs to do is to cut taxes, remove welfare and get going. No,
Sanjay,
I think it's an important ideological
Sanjay,
debate,
please listen
and
to
we
me.
should do it
Let's
from
not get personal here. No, okay. No, Sanjay, give me a minute. I think you and Gopal Agarwal can go head on with each other, but I don't think it's fair for, experts and politicians to kind of get into a mudslinging match. So let's not make this
Supriya,
personal
give me a
attack.
chance
Let's just keep it to the debate on hand. And Gopal Agarwal, I'm coming to you. Please keep your answer brief. In an election year, can you put your head out there and say, this is ridiculous, this should not be done, this will not be done? Because the reality is that people are already looking at the BJP as to how can you beat the Congress by putting up something which is better and even more compelling.
Supriya, I would like to mention only two things. This country had seen the effect of crony capitalism, which the last 10 years of UPA had done. They had left the economy.
We saw Anil Ambani and Gautam Adani and Nirav Modi and Mehul
fragile five.
Yes, sir.
And
This
Supriya
has become
asked
an
him to
Ambani
keep his mouth
Adani
shut.
economy.
I listened to him. The issue was crony capitalism.
Sanjay, let him go ahead.
Our
Sanjay,
economy
please let
was
him
in
go ahead.
doldrums. Inflation was high. No, the inflation was high, the fiscal deficit was high, the corruption was very high, there was no ease of doing business. We saw the worst kind of crony capitalism and our economy was in doldrum. It took 5 years of our willpower and strong effort that we are now the 10 fastest reforming economy in the world and fastest growing economy in the world and the 6th largest economy in the world. The country has seen the bad effects of crony capitalism, which the UPA perpetuated and benefited some limited persons. I can go on, but I will stop here. The issue is, we had seen the bad effects of crony capitalism.
I am sorry, yes.
Now we will
Yes.
see the bad effects of crony socialism.
Okay.
Crony socialism is what the Congress is trying to perpetuate.
Okay.
The same people of
just
this
think-
country are
Okay.
understanding
I just
that
think-
this
Okay, so
crony
you call it crony socialism.
will harm them
Okay.
worse than the
No.
crony
We will tell this to the
capitalism
people of India.
which the Congress
Sorry.
We will
was
tell this to the people of
perpetuating
India.
for last the 10 years. And
Okay.
the
Okay.
economy was in
Gopal Agarwal and
doldrums. We
Sanjay
have
Jha,
brought
I am
it to
sorry. This is not how a debate is done. No. Why are you guys shouting? I don't understand. Gopal Agarwal and Sanjay Jha, you guys can't be speaking at the same time. This is a decent discussion we do. This is not one of those channels where you call 12 people and give them a chance once in 3 hours. No, please don't shout and yell at each other. This is an important debate that we are doing. Remember one thing, whatever we may discuss, whether it is the social impact of the scheme or the fiscal implications, the reality is that at the center of this debate is the poor of this country, and it's high time we talk about them. It's high time we talk about them with dignity. It's high time we talk about them as far as social engagement is concerned. Do they need the money? Of course they do. Should they be given the money? Of course they should be given. But is this the right way to do this? That is debatable, and I think it's only fair that we put out every point of view on the table as far as this debate is concerned. This is not the first, but this is one of the many series of debates we will perhaps have on topics like these. But thank you very, very much, Professor Ritika Khera, M.R. Venkatesh, Sadanand Dume, Gopal Agarwal and Sanjay Jha for joining us on this edition of the India Development Debate. We take a quick breather. There's so much more that's coming up right here on ET Now. Stay with us.